What's up everybody, I'm here on this very cold day in New York City to talk about the pros and cons of moving abroad in 2025. If you've never seen my channel before, I've lived abroad 2 separate times, once for a few years in China, and then most recently I was living in the Czech Republic, and these are things I think you definitely should consider before deciding to pack up and move and live in another country. So let's get started with what I think is pro number 1, and that's the fact that in 2025, the world is as accessible as it's ever been. There's so many different countries you can move to doing all sorts of things, teaching English, working in IT or data science or any skilled trade, or you can just work your own remote job and get a digital nomad visa. So there's so many opportunities that if it's your goal to move abroad, it's definitely something that's extremely doable, and you can probably do it honestly pretty quickly from now. But the first con I want to talk about is honestly so obvious, I thought about not even including it in this video. It's the fact that moving abroad means you have to leave your life behind currently and also your family and friends. There are so many times over the years I was abroad where I had to miss holidays like Christmas. I had to miss certain events like my nephew's first birthday party or big things that I wanted to be at but I couldn't because I was abroad. So you see your family a lot less, you see your friends a lot less. And if that's really important to you, then it's kind of difficult. There's so many people I've met who told me they could never have lived abroad because they can't not see their family as often as they do now. So I think that's something you definitely have to consider and really be sure before you make this decision. But pro number 2 is basically a counter to that point. It's the fact that you have so many new life experiences by moving abroad. Living in China was one of the best experiences of my life. I was able to see a lot of Asia, learn so much about Chinese culture, and it's just something I never would have experienced had I not made this leap and moved abroad. And I think that, yes, there are some sacrifices like missing family, but the new experiences are probably worth it. At least to me they were, and to many other people it's worth it to try and experience parts of the world that you never would have seen before. So you have to weigh that, but I think it's honestly such a big pro and the experience is definitely worth it. All right, and now on to the second negative, and this one's kind of changing topics a bit, but it's what are you going to do with your stuff? If you are set up living your life in whatever country you're in, then what are you going to do with everything you currently own? Do you have a car that you need to leave somewhere? Do you have a lot of furniture and things that you might need to put in storage or leave with a family member or a friend? There's so many other little factors to consider, or if you're leaving your apartment, you're leaving your house and moving to a different country, what are you going to do with all your things and your current life setup? All right, and now moving on to positive number 3, and it's the fact that I think you can really enhance your life by moving abroad for a number of reasons. First of all, if you're coming from the US, I think that the quality of life in other countries is surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, a lot better than in the US. The food's a bit better, people are healthier, and there's overall a good quality of life depending on what country you go to. So that's one factor. And also, if you're going for a specific trade or skill, or you're working a remote job with a higher salary, you can have a better financial situation. So you can live a bit better, live healthier, and make those decisions based on finances, rather than if you were struggling because the US is so expensive. And this is true for any other country that you're coming from as well, but I'm using the US as a specific example. There's just so many reasons that you can live a better quality of life abroad. Now there are 2 caveats to that point that I think I'll collectively consider as con number 3. And the first is that I make it sound so easy to get a remote job and move abroad, but more recently there's been a lot of issues with people who say they're getting remote jobs but they're requiring you to live in the country that the job is based in for a number of factors. But that's one thing to consider, that you can't just get any remote job and do it. You have to check with your company and make these arrangements to make this happen. And the second thing is the morality of it all. I'm not trying to tell you how to live or make these choices. I don't know if you can tell, it's got super windy, but I'll finish here, is that I don't want to tell you how to live and make these choices, but you have to consider where you're going if you're going to be a digital nomad. There's a lot of places where it's causing issues for locals, like in Portugal and Spain or in Bali, places where people with these high salaries are buying up all the property and making things way more expensive and pricing locals out of the area, and that causes a moral issue. Once again, you make your own choice. That's something that you should consider if you're going to work a remote job from your home country and not take a local job with a local salary. Okay, and now let's move on to pro number 4, and that is that you can change your location, meaning you can visit other countries in that region. So like I said, I moved to China for a while, and when I was living in China, I could explore tons of different countries in Asia. Then when I was living in the Czech Republic, even easier, saw so much of Europe just in 1 year because it's all so close and compact. You can see so many different countries and cultures. That makes it a lot easier because if you're living in, especially in North America, it's so expensive and difficult to travel the world and see a lot of places because it's so hard and expensive to fly to those areas. But if you change your location, you can change the countries you're seeing and get different perspectives from different parts of the world. All right, and now for negative number 4, and it's not really a negative per se if you're up for the challenge, but there are just a few things that become tiresome or difficult as you live abroad, especially if you don't speak the local language. Like I was learning Chinese, but I didn't know the language that well. So there was just day-to-day interactions like at restaurants or banks or certain things where I'd always have to use Google Translate. I couldn't get things done as easy as I would have in my home country, which is natural. But also certain things like getting sick. I remember I had to go to the Chinese hospital a couple times, and without knowing the language and trying to navigate that system, it made it so much more difficult and just really, really hard because I wasn't in my home country. And that's just something that you have to be prepared for if you go abroad. It's not always 100% of the time an amazing experience. You have to get through these challenges as well. So I want to end this video by talking about something I think is both a pro and a con, and it's the fact that you can make friends all over the world while you're living abroad. That might seem like it's only a positive thing, which it probably is, because you just meet people from everywhere and learn and make so many different connections. And I remember I met a Colombian friend living in China with me, and then when I went to Colombia last year, I was able to meet up with him and he showed me around his own country. And there's just so many little things that you can do and meet so many people because of these experiences. That's just a positive, I think, because everyone needs more connection and more friendship in the world. But it's also a con because it's kind of sad, because now I have friends who live in China, I have friends who live in Colombia, I have friends who live in the Czech Republic, and who are scattered all over the world. And I can't see all these people all the time. It's really difficult. So you meet people for short amounts of time, and you're so happy to know them and be friends with them, but then soon you're gonna have to go long stretches of times without seeing them ever, or even seeing them ever again, because it was very short-lived. So you make these connections, but they might be short-lived and might be harder to maintain. So that's a pro and a con, but I think it's a good thing to have friends all over the world. All right, so there you have it. Those were 5 pros and 5 cons of moving abroad in 2025. I hope you found it insightful, and I always love hearing from you. Do you have any opinions or comments or other pros and cons you want to share? Let me know in the comments below. Now it's freezing cold, so I'm gonna go inside and warm up. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you on the next video.